Welcome to the 2025 Budget Sim Racing Buyer's Guide. This is a guide that is going to try to help you out getting into sim racing as cheap as possible, but I will also recommend some equipment that won't be as cheap, but still generally affordable for what is sim racing. This guide is inspired by Simracing Paddock Sim Racing Buyer's Guide done a lot of years ago, and I'm continuing this in his honor. Also, I'll be having some affiliate links in the description if you want to help this channel out. And if you find this type of guides useful, don't forget to press like and subscribe. Any buyer's guide, but especially budget buyer's guide, because we're trying to get you into sim racing with something as affordable as possible, cannot start without saying to you, check out the secondhand market. You'll find in the secondhand market a lot of diamonds rough in the cut, and some of the equipment there will be in good condition and with a healthy discount. And this is good for you, of course. But as with any recommendations of secondhand markets, you do need to have a look carefully and ask everybody else or with a seller what is going on with the equipment, why they are selling the equipment, the state of the equipment, and if needed, you'll need to ask for more pictures. But also, recommendation, in a secondhand market, be careful with some of the offers, because if they look too good to be true, they probably are too good to be true. Regardless, there are some recommendations of equipments that I can give to you, especially when you are starting. One of them will be the venerated Logitech G25s or G27s. These will be old now, but they'll probably still be in healthy condition or just requiring a little bit of maintenance if you are more mechanically adept. Also, any recommendation that I'll be giving out from this point onwards can be possibly to find out in the secondhand market. Other recommendations that I can give to you is a Trustmaster T150. These are discontinued wheels, but because they are good enough, they are also a good way to get yourself into sim racing without spending too much money. Probably can get them around at 125 euros, pounds, or dollars, something around those lines, probably even cheaper, depending on time of year. Other recommendations that I'm going to give you now, but not later on and are still in the market, will be the Trustmaster TGT1 and the TGT2s. These were good wheels at their time, but their time has passed, years has passed, technology has evolved, and you probably can still find a steal on these, and these are compatible with Trustmaster's ecosystem, so you can change their wheels as well. Now, as a word of warning, if there are such thing as too good to be true in the secondhand market, the same thing can be said about new equipment. I'm not saying that the equipment I'm going to talk about is a scam or anything like that. It's just something that you much rather avoid, because if you stick with the gamepad, it's much a better experience than buy a wheel like this. And I'm talking about bungee wheels, stuff like the Trustmaster T80 or the PXN V9 or something like the Ori wheels or anything along those lines. With the price you pay, you might as well just save a little bit more and you can get something secondhand or even new that will give you a much better experience. So in my opinion, and this is my recommendation, avoid these wheels, spend a little more and get something much, much better. So let's start with the first recommendation with new equipment, and that is the Trustmaster T128. That should be your basic mark if you want to start, because from this point onwards, everything will get better, but this start, it's much better than the bungee wheels. The Trustmaster T128 is a very basic wheel that has 4-seat back and a very simple pedal set. The pedal set isn't really that important. What is important is more the wheel, because the pedal is just enough to have a throttle and a brake. Very basic. It won't give you a lot of feels into that, but it's something you can use on the floor and you won't have any problems using it and putting it on your desk as well. In terms of 4-seat back, the 4-seat back is actually good enough. It will give you all the sensations you need for something in forms, and it is the Xbox and PC compatible. It's not PlayStation compatible, sadly, so that means you can play it Forza Horizon, Forza Motorsports, or anything on the PC, and it will be just good enough. The price is pretty compelling. At the moment, they have a discount. It's 130 pounds, about $160 or thereabouts, plus taxes and all of that. And, for a very entry-level set, it's something that it is dependable. Also, one thing that is worth noticing is that if you buy something, make sure that you buy something that can be resold. And these wheels are actually not too bad in terms of resale value. And another wheel that is really not bad in terms of resale value, because they have been around for forever, are the Logitech G wheels, mainly the more modern ones, or the G29s, G93s. They're mostly the same. They're kind of noisy. Everybody complains that they're noisy, but they are actually really good in terms of force feedback. The Logitech G29 will have Xbox compatible version called the G920, but they're mostly the same except for the 920 will have a different button box at the front. In terms of force feedback, they're actually really good for a gear-driven wheel. It has fantastic force feedback, and the pedal set is actually a really big step up from the Thrustmaster T128. In terms of reliability, these things are legendary. They're able to keep you for 10 years or even more. Logitech G25 wheels are still being used now on this age, and the pedals, every so often, they need to be cleaned, but it's something that you will learn with it. It's one of those recommendations that I would say, even though the T128 is the basic, I would much rather steer you towards a G29 or a G923, because honestly, those things last forever, and the jump in force feedback quality is actually pretty steep. You can get the Logitech G29 in secondhand about 120, something like that, but generally though, you can get them new at about 200, sometimes more, sometimes less. Really depends on the time of year. But I think in terms of offer, the G29 is better than G923. Between them, there isn't really much difference in terms of how they operate. The only really difference is something they call true force, which is haptic feedback that emulates vibrations of the motor. But honestly, on this wheel, it feels kind of a gimmick, and the G923 will be about 50 pounds more expensive. So my recommendation is get the older one, and with that money, those 50 pounds, if you want, you can get a shifter, and you will have basically a full set that can last you for a long time. Next up, we'll have the eternal rivals of the Logitech entry series. That will be the Thrustmaster T248 and the T300. The T248 comes in as a replacement of the T150 and improves on the belt system that has more torque, in this case 3.5 Newton meters, and also a pedal set that are modernized pedals that will come with Hall sensors. That means the issues that, for example, the Thrustmaster T300 pedals will have, or the old T150s also have, generally go away, because sometimes potentiometers, they can get issues, they get dirty, and it will be hard to read measures in the pedals. So what the T248 becomes is a more reliable set that comes with more power. In terms of compatibility, it is compatible with the PlayStation or the PC, depending on the version that you buy, and also the PC and the Xbox, once again, depending on the version. And in terms of compatibility, it works pretty well. The force feedback is okay, but I found the wheel a little bit slow in certain reactions, but generally, I think that wheel is incredibly competent. But still, even to this day, I think that depending on the price you get it, because the T248 can be gotten at around $250, $300 sometimes. The T300 might be a better deal, in my opinion. It has more or less the same torque. It is an older wheel, but it's a purely belt system, feels a little bit less notchy, and it's a much faster system as well. In my opinion, I've used once again the Thrustmaster T300 for a review 5 years later. Found the wheel incredibly competent. It adds more than enough torque generally for the things that I did. And the better thing is that you can also remove some the wheels. You can remove the center wheel and use some of the wheels of the Thrustmaster ecosystem. So there's more flexibility in the T300 system. However, the pedals, once again, will be slightly inferior to the pedals of the Thrustmaster T248. In terms of compatibility, the T300 will be compatible with the PlayStation and the PC. However, there's a version for the Xbox called the TX, and the TX will be roughly the same thing, except that it has 900 degrees of rotation instead of 1080. Of all of these choices thus far, my favorite is the T300 RS because of the flexibility, but the Logitech G29 generally has very good deals around, even in secondhand. So it really depends if you want flexibility or if you want something cheaper that also is incredibly competent. One last option that I'm going to give before moving to the more exciting part of the video will be the PXN wheels, namely the V10 and the V99. The V10 is a decent enough wheel. The V99 is an improved version of it as well. Generally, they go around 200 pounds, $250, something along those lines, and they bring a pedal, a shifter that is actually quite good, and the wheel that, in my opinion, is a bit of a letdown, but in reality it does everything you need, and it generally has compatibility with the PlayStation, with the PC and the Xbox if you need something like that. But In terms of performance, I think the options we've talked about are better, but depending on the price that you can get them, you can get a really good deal. But now starts the more exciting part of this video. Even though it's going to be more expensive, sometimes not really that much, it's the part that shows that the technology of sim racing is evolving also to serve the more budget and or budget friendly part of sim racing as well, with something called small form factor direct drives. And direct drives are also becoming so small, this will be smaller than a Logitech G923, for example, and has basically 3 times the torque, but I won't be recommending this one. I'll be recommending one that is going to be even smaller. The first recommendation I'm going to do will be the Camus C5. The Camus C5 is a different wheel from everything else out there because it integrates the motor inside of the steering wheel. That means it has a very small form factor, and with their desk clamp, you can mount it on a desk. It has 5 Newton meters. In reality, it goes up to around 8 when it goes to peak torque, and the force feedback is very good, very strong, though and sometimes a little bit dampened, but definitely much better than everything that I've mentioned thus far. In terms of price, it really doesn't break the bank. The steering wheel will be around $250. If you buy the desk clamp, it will be up to $300, but you do need to get a pedal set separate. And with the pedal set, it will be costing you around hundreds pounds more, depending on, once again, time of year. But for a pedal set and a wheel that is direct drive, it's around $400, and honestly, we used to pay for that not long ago for a Trustmaster T300. For the same price, but with less torque and with Xbox compatibility, will be the Mozza R3. The Mozza R3 is the smallest wheelbase that exists. It's incredibly tiny, and it comes with a huge advantage beside the Xbox, is that it will be able to be using wheels from the Mozza lineup. It has just enough torque to use some of the wheels like the Mozza KS, and it comes as a bundle already with the pedal set as well. But the small Mozza R3 has 2 bigger brothers that are worth mentioning in this video, and one of them is the Mozza R5 that also comes in a bundle with pedals. It will be 450 pounds, around the same in dollars and euros, or even the Mozza R9, but this one is more expensive. The Mozza R5 is a very good wheel for the torque it produces, and it's compatible with the PC only, sadly, and is also compatible with the Mozza ecosystem of steering wheels. It is able to use the steering wheels, in my opinion, much better than the R3 because it does have around 70% more torque. It's a smooth wheel. It provides just enough conditions to be fast. You can drift with it. You can use their quick release to put steering wheels for drifting and all of that stuff. And Mozza has an extensive ecosystem at the moment with handbrakes, shifters, and other types of wheels that will expand the usability of the Mozza R5. For the price, it isn't really too bad, though there are some other options we need to talk about in just a second. And one of them will be the Mozza R9, which is essentially a little bit of a Achilles heel over the R5 because the R5 is just 5 Newton meters. The R9 isn't really that much more expensive, all things considered, for almost double the torque as well. And there's also another one called the Fanatec CSL-DD Ready to Race that is going to be either 5 Newton meters or 8 Newton meters. But starting with the CSL-DD, because the CSL-DD is basically the wheelbase that started this revolution of cheaper direct drives, the CSL-DD has dropped a lot in price, and it comes even in bundles called Ready to Race. You can get the bundle with a wheel, Fanatec CSL-DD wheelbase, and also a pedal set for 399 euros, which in reality, it isn't really bad at all for the quality of the force feedback it produces. The big thing that the CSL-DD has on top of the Mozza system is that the CSL-DD can be either 5 Newton meters or you can upgrade it to be an 8 Newton meter wheelbase. So essentially, you have a bigger flexibility than the Mozza R5 or the Mozza R9. You either buy 5 Newton meters or 9 meters. And also, Fanatec has a huge ecosystem of wheels and pedals that you can connect your wheelbase to. So it even expands more the usability. As for the Mozza R9, Mozza R9 will be the most expensive version or most expensive choice out here because you have to buy everything separate. They have a bundle but has no pedals. It comes with a bigger wheel at around 600, but the wheelbase is around 400, but you need to add pedals and you need to also add a wheel. The last wheel I'm going to recommend is a wheel that has just gotten very recently in sim racing. That will be the Trustmaster T598. This was going to be a little bit different of a direct drive because it's called an axial drive instead of a direct drive. Generally, this provides a much smoother operation, and with the limited experience that I've had with it in Sim Racing Expo, it was incredibly smooth, though it had some issues with the Assetto Corsa Competizione 4-seat to the point that it didn't feel anything as good. And generally, it kind of felt a little bit muted, not as sharp as the other wheelbases are able to provide to you. But the thing about the T598 is that it has quite a lot of torque for the price it has. It is $499 depending where you buy it. Once again, it comes with a 2-pedal set and it comes with PlayStation compatibility. Though, even though they announce it as a 5Nm wheelbase, it does have a very large overshoot to around 10 Nm at extreme circumstances, which will make it feel incredibly interesting and intense when you are driving. Though, in terms of performance, it is more or less comparable, even though the technology is a little bit different on the direct drive. In terms of performance, it's more or less compatible, even though I prefer the feeling of the other wheels. But the kicker is, for Trustmaster, for that price and PlayStation compatibility, for a lot of you, is really a no-brainer, because for Fanatec, if you want to get a PlayStation version of a CSLD called a GTD Pro, you need to spend up around 600, 700, 800 pounds. And with that saving, that's a lot of money for games or anything else that you want to get, or even a new part for a computer or something like that. And even though it's more expensive or cheaper in this case, it doesn't really feel $300 cheaper. It feels like a decent direct drive that needs some updates on the firmware. And this is just a quick rundown of budget sim racing or equipment on the more budget side. But of course, everything I mentioned is just the tip of the iceberg out there. I need your help to make this complete this year. So tell us in the comments some ideas, some good equipment that you can find, new, secondhand, or even prices in your area. If you find this useful, don't forget to press like and subscribe. Let's try to get 100,000 subscribers this year. Thank you so much, and see you next time.